From the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, this is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast. Coming up on the program,
we're going to talk about composting, hot composting, cold composting, what you might be doing right or wrong.
Mike Novak with his environmental report, your questions, our answers.
And we have author of Groundbreaking Food Gardens and the year-round vegetable gardener, Niki Jabbour from Nova Scotia, Canada.
All that and more coming up right now on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is permeating into your ears with your host, Joey Bear.
And it could be the weeds. Some gardeners try to get all the weeds out of their garden. Other gardeners leave them in their garden. It's really a decision that you need to make. There's benefits to both sides of that. It's just something that you need to figure out what you want to do for your garden.
And Holly Bear.
Canning is a science. When you're canning, you want to make sure you follow the directions, follow the recipe, don't cut corners, don't replace things. It's crucial to you, your health, and your family.
They're professional gardeners with full-time jobs, and they're on the air now.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. I am Joy Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, gardening partner, and best friend,
Holly Bear.
Behind the TWVG microphone here at the WI Garden Media Studios in southeast Wisconsin. The information you're going to hear is crucial, vital, and important to your garden. You just may have to tweak some of the dates and times you applied for your particular growing area. If you're tuning in for the very first time, we welcome you and encourage you to share the program with your fellow gardeners. If you've tuned in for all 28 episodes, we appreciate your attentiveness and the opportunity to teach you a little bit more. You can find all previous episodes on our website at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com underneath the podcast tab. You can scroll through and see the guests and the contents and the topics that we talk about. If you have no idea who we are and what we do, and you've stumbled upon us strictly because of happen chance, Holly will tell a little bit about what we do, who we are, and then we're going to talk about composting the right way, what you may be doing the wrong way, and how we can all be better at composting by the time we get done.
So what we do, we have on our website, we have a ton of videos, over 700 videos on how to grow food, what to do with the food you grow, how to deal with pests in the garden, reusing everyday items, all that good stuff. And we also have this podcast, and then we have a quarterly digital full-color magazine on the website, and that comes out every 3 months. It's got every 4 months. It's got great articles. No, it's every 3 months. Got great articles. And we always have somebody great to interview.
And that is free for you to download, read online, or print out for your own personal hard copy. That's underneath the magazine tab on the top of the page at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. And there's other things that we do, speaking requests, and we can speak to your garden group or center wherever you're at now via virtual reality, I guess is what you want to call it, through Skype. So if you're interested in that, you can certainly check that out and the topics that we cover, and maybe we can address your group at some point during the year. So let's talk about composting, because, Holly, I think composting, when people hear the word composting, whether you, at whatever stage of gardener you are, people take composting to the level of confusion. People think composting is far more complicated than what it truly is, and you know, it's been overstated. You know, this is how you compost, this is what you don't want to put in, this is what you do want to put in. So we're going to kind of debunk all the myths here, and we're going to tell you how we compost, how you can compost, what you can put in, what you can't put in, what you should put in, and all that stuff that goes along with it.
Right. Well, I think it could become complicated if you let
people people allow themselves to feel that it's complicated.
Right.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. It's actually pretty simple. You can compost a lot of things, and many people don't often realize that either. And you can compost your kitchen scraps, your coffee grounds, and your twigs and your leaves. We use our leaves for mulch, but you can compost that. Your grass clippings, which again we use for mulch. But a number of things, and eggshells. But things you don't want to compost would be anything that's like dairy related. So if you have some old yogurt or cottage cheese or something, you don't want to put that in your compost. And bones.
Well, you don't want to put that in your compost if you're in the city and your compost is close to your residence.
Right.
If you've got a compost pile in the back 40, then that stuff, just go ahead and throw it all in there.
Yeah.
Because what is occurring in that, and we're going to talk about how you build a compost pile so you can get compost a little quicker than other methods are. But if you got the compost pile in the back 40 next to the woods, you can put bones, you can put anything in it. Because what is going to occur here, it's going to break down naturally.
But it can also attract animals.
And that can be a beneficial thing here. The reason why I say that is if you have a large compost pile and you're incorporating bones and yogurt and all this other stuff in it, the animals are going to get in there, scrounge around, dig it up, and actually turn the pile for you to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. But also, you only want to do that if you have a compost pile that is significantly far away from your home.
Most people probably don't have that.
Right. But so I'm putting that out there.
I'm just saying, yeah. Okay, so those are things you want to avoid is meat, dairy, animal scraps.
Now, if you have old milk, you want to put that in your garden because that has calcium in it, and that will help the plants grow better. Yeah, but you want to avoid the yogurt.
And if you're not sure, you can ask us. Otherwise, there's just lists and lists of things you can compost.
But what's the general rule? Can I put this in the compost pile or can't I? What's the general umbrella rule for this?
Did it come from the earth at one point? So, like, even paper, it may not have come directly from the earth, but it came from trees. Same thing like cotton. If you like old cotton rags or old cotton T-shirts, you can put that in your compost too. I recommend cutting it up or something, but you could definitely do that. Like I said, eggshells.
Well, and like you were saying that
egg cartons,
dairy and meat, not necessarily growing out of the ground.
Right.
So that's kind of the rule of thumb. Now you talked about cutting the cotton up. You don't want to use lint from your dryer unless it is like purely natural. If it's a synthetic, it's not going to break down. But talk about the size or the particle size of materials going in the compost pile. If you can make it happen.
Yeah, most stuff, the smaller it is, the faster it's going to break down. So you could take an old T-shirt, an old cotton T-shirt, and put it in your compost pile. It's going to take a while to break down. But if you cut it into strips or chunks, or just even smaller than that, it'll break down quicker.
Shredded paper. Mm-hmm. Shred your paper. If you're pulling weeds out, obviously we're not all putting them through the shredder or the leaf mulcher to break them down to a smaller particle. But again, keeping it to a smaller particle breaking down. Now let's talk about how we can get compost to break down very, very quickly compared to other methods. Let's talk about hot composting. What is the procedure that needs to be followed in order to get hot compost, which allows you to have compost about 6 to 9 months, realistically?
Sure. So hot compost consists of basically an equal part of browns to greens, which is the nitrogens to the
carbons.
Carbons. Thank you. So nitrogens include things like grass clippings, eggshells, food scraps, anything that's
coffee grounds.
A little more. Let's say a little bit more wetness in the consistency.
Recently alive in the nature world.
Yeah, pretty much. And then
your brown or your carbons.
Your browns or your carbons include things like twigs,
shredded paper, leaves,
even old shredded T-shirts or rags or whatnot, cardboard tubes, eggshell containers. Or egg containers, things like that.
The cardboard ones, not the styrofoam ones.
Yeah, not the styrofoam ones.
Now, people will say, well, there's certain points of the year where I have a lot of greens, and then there's certain part of the years where I have a lot of browns. What you can do, and if you're really a hardcore composter, this is what you can do. In the fall, you can pick up bags, save your leaves. Many gardeners do this. Mm-hmm. And then as the spring comes, you can use that as mulch, and that's what we do. Or you can incorporate your green material to your brown material throughout the spring and get that core temperature up. Now, the core temperature, you're looking at you want to get it to about 160 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit for 72 consecutive hours in order to kill 99.9% of the seeds that is in that pile. If you do not reach that core temperature, you're going to have viable weed seeds. And some seeds are viable and stay dormant for up to 80 years. So at the time of building the pile, let's say you build the pile on a Monday. you will notice the temperature, if done correctly, the browns to greens, 50 ratio, layer of browns, layer of greens, layer of browns, layer of greens. The scientists and the universities say 1 cubic yard is what you want. That's 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot cube of material. And you will notice within 48, 72 hours, the core beginning to heat very rapidly. Now, what that's doing is that it's absorbing the oxygen, the microbial life is absorbing the oxygen and starting to break down and create heat. Now, you want to leave that alone until you notice the temperature start to decrease. Then you want to turn the pile, which means you take the outer portion and put it in the inside, and take the inner portion and put it on the outside, reintroducing oxygen into your pile, and that core temperature will heat back up again. Right. That's the basis of hot composting. Now, you will see videos online where people use grass clippings, weeds, and alcoholic beverages to rapidly create a very quick breakdown of materials, which is called drunk composting. That's within 14 days you have usable compost material. We're not going to cover that. That's something you can look into further if that's something you want to dabble in. Now, we create what is called a cold compost. Now, what is cold compost, Holly?
It's basically, I don't want to say it's lazy composting, but it is. So basically what we do is we have a compost pile, and we've kind of got it more refined now. We've made it so that it's more of like a compost block.
About a 3 by 3 by 3.
Yeah. And so what we do is we just put our scraps there, whatever we have, our kitchen scraps or our yard scraps, yard waste, what have you, and we put in our compost pile. And we just keep putting on top of each other.
And it does gradually break down. We'll get, a quarter of the pile composted by, in 12 months.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you had the opportunity, and we had the opportunity to do the brown, green, get it heat up. Now, there is times where we do get core temperatures that are fairly warm. And that's just based on the materials that we're adding. But we're not specifically going in there saying, okay, I need another inch of brown. I need another 2 inches of greens.
Right.
We got to layer this thing up. It does work, but the seeds are still viable. Mm-hmm. So, with that being...
So, what we do...
Yeah, what do we do?
We kind of mix it, but not a lot. But what we do is we sift it. And then once we sift it, we have...
At the beginning of the growing season.
Right, at the beginning of the growing season in the spring. And we have this nice black gold that we get from our whatever scraps we had and put together and broke down over winter. But then what we do is we put that compost in the bottom of containers.
That's the bottom half.
Yeah, bottom half. And then we put our good compost, leaf compost, on the second half. But that way we're utilizing it. It's helping create drainage, for the plants.
It's got nutrients. It just has seeds that are viable. And we're stretching the good compost by introducing our compost in the bottom half of the containers and putting the good compost that has been broke down in a heated compost pile on the top half. So we're utilizing our compost, but stretching the compost that we get as well.
Right.
So that's another method that's called cold composting, or some people call it lazy composting. And compost piles can be anything. You can have tumblers, which the breaking down process is a little quicker because you're easy. It's elevated. You just crank a knob or spin a tumbler and you mix it up. You can have it in a box or container, elevated trash can with multiple holes.
One trash can
holes in it, based on, or you can just have this pile out in wherever. That you can, if you really got a lot of it, you bring your front loader in and you have, that type of thing, you stir it. So there's many different things. Again, with any type of composting, and we highly encourage you to compost. There are methods to indoor composting, which we're not going to get into, but we highly encourage you to compost. Why do we highly encourage you to compost if you're not composting?
Well, one, it's good for the earth. And
don't be an earth hater.
Don't be an earth hater. And two, it could be good for your garden. It gives you compost, and that's nutrient dense.
Right, and it's stuff that you're pulling out of your garden in most sense.
Right.
And then you're putting it back in the pile. It breaks down. You're putting it back in the garden. It's a circle. It's a cycle. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, if you have questions about your compost or what you can and can't put in, you can certainly search for it online, or you can send us an email. You can find the email contact on our website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, with the big red button on the right-hand side.
I think it says contact.
It says contact, or question. It says question. With a question mark. So if you're unable to find that on your mobile device, you may have to enable, or you might have to click on the tab button or scroll down and find it. So after the break, we will have Mike Novak with his environmental report and your questions and our answers right after this.
Do you want your next raised beds to be easy, functional, and beautiful? The Embrace helps you create the garden you've always wanted. Finally, raised beds that everyone can assemble and enjoy. No tools needed. Just slide any lumber into the Embrace corner, fill with your favorite soil mix, and you're ready to plant. Made from 100% recycled steel right here in the USA. And a portion of every sale helps to build school and community gardens all across the country. Let the Embrace help you create your next raised bed. Grow beautifully with the Embrace. Available at local garden centers and online at artofthegarden.net.
Looking for a fast-acting, non-toxic weed killer for your organic garden? One that works in cool and cloudy conditions as low as 40 degrees and is highly biodegradable with visible results in less than 2 hours? Then look no more. Avenger Weed Killer has it all and more. Made from oranges, Avenger is highly effective, easy to use, and has a pleasant citrus aroma. It is OMRI listed and approved for organic gardeners under the USDA's National Organic Program. Avenger Weed Killer is a choice for organic gardeners and homeowners who are looking for an effective, safe way to control unwanted weeds. Available in ready-to-use sprays and concentrate, ask your local lawn and garden supplier for Avenger Weed Killer. For more information and a list of suppliers, visit AvengerOrganics.com. Avenger Weed Killer, eco-friendly, deadly to weeds.
It's all about the soil at ManureT.com. With their grass-fed, antibiotic, and growth hormone-free cattle and horses, owner Annie Haven puts the quality in her premium soil conditioner. 100% organic and natural, whether feeding your flowers or veggies, indoors or out, you can grow organically with confidence. To purchase authentic Haven brand Manure Tea, small orders or large, go to ManureT.com. Always free shipping.
Now back to two environmentally conscious organic gardeners.
If you spray chemicals on your garden to get rid of those bad bugs, those chemicals are not, they don't just kill the bad bugs, they kill all the bugs in your garden. And without having a balanced ecosystem, your plants in your particular growing zone can suffer.
Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the program. If you want to check out our sponsors, you can view them on our sponsors tab at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Feel free to support them as they support us.
Well, each program we have Mike Novak from Q4 Radio out of Chicago, Illinois. He has a program every Sunday morning between 9 and 11 Central Time on Q4 Radio. And he comes to us each program with his state of the environment. And most times it's things that maybe we should have already known before he told us. But we're glad he's telling us, so we now know. And here is Mike Novak.
And now to a man who's not afraid to tell you what you need to do to keep the planet he lives on clean.
Take your food scraps out to your compost pile. Screw in a compact fluorescent light bulb. Turn on a window fan instead of an air conditioner. Low flow, baby. Shower heads and toilets. Take one napkin at Starbucks instead of 6.
Mike Novak.
Welcome to another installment of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Environmental Report. I'm Mike Novak, and you can hear me live each Sunday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time on Q4 Radio, which streams at www.QUE4.org and on the Q4 Radio Facebook page. You can also get my podcasts at MikeNovak.net, MikeNowak.net. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet today. I have two quick stories. What do you want first, the good news or the bad news? Oh, let's go with the bad news so we can finish on an up note. According to the Smithsonian, there are about 900,000 different kinds of living insects that we know about, and that accounts for approximately 80% of the world's species. Are you with me so far? But those are just the species that we've managed to study. Some people think the number's closer to a couple of million. A guy named Terry Irwin, who works for the Smithsonian Institution's Department of Entomology and Latin American forest canopies, thinks that number is more like 30 million. It's also quite likely that insects have the largest biomass of the terrestrial animals. Humans are looking to push their numbers to 9 billion by the middle of the century, but we're pikers. It's estimated that there might be as many as 10 quintillion individual insects alive. Think about that for a couple of seconds while you're trying to fall asleep. That's where the bad news comes in. According to an article in Environment 360 from Yale University, insect populations are declining all over the planet. The story notes a 2014 study in the journal Science where, quote, lead author Rodolfo Durzo, an ecologist at Stanford University, developed a global index for invertebrate abundance that showed a 45% decline over the last 4 decades, end quote. If you've been paying attention, you already know about the decline of the monarch butterfly and our honeybees. So what's causing this drop in population? Yawn. The usual suspects: pesticides, the spread of monoculture crops such as corn and soybeans, the overuse of nitrogen fertilizer, urbanization, and habitat destruction. Nothing to see here. Move along. So, who pays the price for this decline? Well, birds, for one, who love to snack on insects. And for another, mammals and reptiles and amphibians, oh my, that rely on the nourishment of insects. And human beings, who are up the food chain a bit but are woefully unaware of the damage they are causing and probably won't be until it's too late. All right, now I'm just sad. Let's move on to the good news. Back in the day, when schools in America weren't obsessed by making students pass tests and actually taught stuff, we all learned that 3/4 of the planet was covered by water. And we said, wow. Then we were taught that most of that water was too salty to drink, and we said, bummer. The environmental magazine Encia explains that desalination has been the holy grail of making ocean water drinkable, but microorganisms in seawater have always found a way to clog the membranes through which salt water was being pushed. That meant costly chemical cleaning. Until scientists at the Zuckerberg Institute for Water Research in Israel, no, not that Zuckerberg, figured out how to use porous lava stone to capture the microorganisms before they reached the membranes. Voila! Potable water. Encia explains that Israel, which was in the middle of a 900-year drought, sounds positively biblical, doesn't it? Now gets 55% of its water from desalination. And if this technology can be shared throughout the Middle East, perhaps, just perhaps, some of the political and social pressure caused by severe water shortages could be eased. And if that happens, well, who knows? That's my report for today. I hope you catch the Mike Novak Show on Q4 Radio, QUE4.org, which you can always link to at my website, MikeNovak.net. Go green or go home. I need a drink of water.
Thank you, Mike, for that. We always appreciate Mike coming on the program and sharing information with us to help us be better stewards of the earth. Well, it's the time of the program where your questions get answered by us, and if you don't like the answers we gave you or give you, maybe you shouldn't ask the question in the first place. So we got 3 questions here. We got a question about peppers, mushrooms, and tomato cracking.
Okay, so the first one, they buy these they have the pepper plants. They look real good. They'll put them in the ground. There might be one flower on them. Then they put them in the ground and they get beautiful plants, but no flowers or no peppers.
Well, there's a couple of scenarios that might be a result of this. One, we don't have enough information to really go with it. Now, maybe if we had a photograph, it would be a little more helpful. But there's a couple of things you might want to look at, and this may be happening to you where you're getting good foliage, good plants, and very, very small amount of buds or blooms that produce edible, peppers or tomatoes or whatever the case is. So, what are some of the things that might be the issue in regards to the pepper problem?
We were thinking lack of nutrients in your soil. If there's a lack of phosphorus or potassium, they're not going to help put on the flower. Or it could be the pH.
The pH can be a little messed up. High pH will produce and allow the plants to produce very, very large plants, but minimal to no production. So with that being said, also could be the plant may be in a partial shade area. Peppers love heat, keep the moisture to the roots and give them the heat, and they're going to like it. Now, they do not produce they're very well when temperatures exceed 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's the same for tomatoes. Once you exceed that temperature, then the pollen basically is no good.
Right.
You have to wait for those temperatures to drop before the pollen becomes good. But obviously, the temperatures are not 90 plus degrees consistently here. So I definitely would look at a soil test. If this is and this has been happening for several years now, and adding potassium and phosphate to the soil. Clearly, nitrogen is not an issue because of the lushness of the plants. So that's something to keep in mind as well when it comes to that. Then we have a question in regards to mushrooms. I have a raised bed, and I noticed that there are mushrooms forming on top of the soil. Is this normal? Can I remove the mushrooms, or what should I do?
Sure. So this is normal. There's a lot of different stuff in your soil. There's bacteria, there's diseases, there's even fungi, fungal spores in your soil. Some of them may lay dormant for a long time, and then some of them, if you get the right conditions, so like maybe wherever this person is, they've had enough warm, wet conditions, it's going to make mushrooms sprout. It's not a bad thing, it's not a harmful thing, it's not invasive or anything like that. If you don't like how they look, you just knock them over. They'll die back eventually.
Do not eat them.
Do not eat them. And if you have small kids or dogs or pets that go in your garden, don't let them eat the mushrooms either.
It's just when the soil is far too wet. So it could be a lot of rain, or it could be you're overwatering the area where these are occurring. So keep that in mind. So it's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. Can be a little scary because you don't know what's going on here. Because mushrooms are not something you necessarily plant in the garden, and you don't expect them to come up. So not a bad thing. You can knock them over and just use them, or you can put them in your compost pile and break down that way as well.
So what's our final question?
Final question. I shared an image on social media a few days ago of our first tomato, and it was a black crim, and it had a crack around the top of it. And the question was, my tomatoes are cracking as well. Is this normal, or what is the cause of a tomato cracking? Well, there's a couple of answers to that question. Many times in gardening, there's not just a yes, no, right, wrong, red, white answer to it. Tomatoes, heirlooms, some varieties are more susceptible to cracking. Sometimes that's just their growth characteristics, as well as excessive cracking can be a result of overwatering or too much water, which results in the internal portions of the tomato the plant has sucked up so much water, it's got to go somewhere, so it pumps it into the fruit, and the internal portions of the fruit expand to the point where it blows out the tomato, or it starts to crack the skin. I've seen it where it has actually blown out the bottom of the tomato, just like you went in with a paring knife and cut the bottom out of it. Because too much water. We went with this was several years ago, went with for several weeks, basically a drought, then it rained really heavily, and all the tomatoes kind of blew apart. So if you can incorporate or water with an irrigation system, with a hose, something to...
But it's not going to be guaranteed.
No, it's not going to be guaranteed. But you will allow the water to be consistent going in the plant, so you're not going to lose them. And in addition, that will decrease the chances of you getting blossom end rot, which we have covered on the program before. It's that blackness on the bottom of the tomato because the plant can't pick up the necessary calcium that's required to form the tomato to its full capabilities. Yeah. If you have that, it's a lack of calcium or the lack of the plant being able to pick up the calcium that's available already in your soil. So what you can do is 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt per 1 gallon of water. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate is not calcium, but there's a science that happens in the soil, and it will help greatly reduce the chances of you getting this on the next round of fruit that the plant produces. It's not going to fix the problem on the fruit that's already got the blackness on the bottom. So keep that in mind. Also, consistent watering or keeping the soil at least somewhat wet will allow the plant to take up the calcium that is available in the soil. So there's 2 tomato problems solved right there. So after the break, we will be Niki Jabbour will be with us. She's from Nova Scotia, Canada. She's an author of 2 fabulous books. And if Niki can garden in Nova Scotia, Canada, that's way up there and it's cold during the winter, then you should be able to garden wherever you're at in your location. We'll be right back after this.
If you could double the life of your raised bed boxes by sealing the wood with a non-toxic wood preservative, would you? Well, now you can with a clear, penetrating product called Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's 100% non-toxic and easy to apply. Seal your bare, untreated wood surfaces, even chicken coops, by spraying Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's invisible, seals the wood from the inside out, and never wears off. Recommended by organic gardening experts. Internal Wood Stabilizer. Check it out at timberprocoatings.com.
A gardener knows that the key to a good plant is its roots. With poor roots, the end result is not good. Conventional pots and trays cause roots to wrap around and become root-bound. Then you try to unwrap the roots at the time of planting, hoping not to break them. But never again with the Root Maker, a non-chemical innovation that naturally air prunes roots to create more vigorous roots. Never a root-bound plant again. Whether trees, flowers, or edibles, home garden or commercial grower, more roots means healthier, more productive plants. To get your own, visit rootmaker.com.
Oh, yeah. What you say? You say Nasala Kombucha. It'll put some glide in your stride and some pep in your step. Nasala Kombucha. Yeah.
Nasala Kombucha makes your body happy. Nasala Kombucha makes your body smile.
Hi, this is Chris Van Cleve, host of the Rose Chat Podcast. You can hear us at rosechatpodcast.com. But right now, we're going to talk vegetables, and you're listening to Joy and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Welcome back to the program. We want to encourage you to check out our sponsors. You can find them on our podcast tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. Support them as they support us.
Let's go to the TWVG hotline and bring in our next guest. She is the best-selling and award-winning author of the Year-Round Vegetable Gardener, 2012 American Horticultural Society's Book Award, and author of her second book, Groundbreaking Food Gardens. She also writes for extensively for magazines like Fine Gardening, Birds and Blooms, Horticultural, Garden Making, and many more. Niki Jabbour is the host of The Weekend Gardener, which airs April through October in Canada on 95.7 FM. Websites, news957.com. You can listen to her show there as well. The show is celebrating 9 years in 2016, and in 2015, Niki won the prestigious Best on Air Talent Award from the Garden Writers Association. For more information, you can follow Nikki on her social media sites, and you can check her out on her website, savvygardening.com. We're always happy when she stops by the program to share her knowledge about gardening. Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, Niki Jabbour.
Thank you, Joey and Holly. It's awesome to talk to you guys again.
Well, it's a pleasure that you take time out of your busy schedule to share some of your information with not only us, but our listeners.
Oh, thanks very much. Well, I like to talk gardening, and there's nobody better to talk gardening with than you guys.
Well, thank you for that.
So you have about 2,000 square feet of garden area, and that's close to ours as well. But many urban gardens, they don't want to use that whole space, or they don't want to use their whole backyard. How can people get the most out of the space they have to grow food, whether it's 200 square feet or 2,000 square feet?
I do have 2,000 square feet, and I'm pretty lucky, although this year I've actually decided to expand my garden, so I'm probably going to go up to 3,000, but, if you have a very limited number, of square feet, if you don't have a lot of space, there's some tricky little things you can do to boost your yield. First of all, you can grow vertically. I know you guys also grow vertically. You can use A-frame trellises, you can use netting, fences, anything really, to grow certain vegetables up. Things like vining tomatoes and cucumbers and different types of squash. A lot of vegetables grow vertically, so that's an easy way to boost your yield by using up that vertical space. So that would be the first thing I'd recommend. I also practice intensive planting, which means I basically plant my crops closer together than, maybe the recommended rates, which lets me enjoy a larger harvest from a smaller space. You can also practice intercropping, which I have detailed in my first book. Basically, if I plant things that are a bit slow growing, like kale or broccoli or even tomatoes in spring, all that empty space in the garden, where those tiny little plants you've tucked in. So between those spaces, also maybe some spinach seed or arugula, or, some, different types of mesclun greens. And they only take a month or so to be a harvestable size. So by the time I pick those, it's at that point the slower growing crops need the space. So there's lots of ways to get more of, your square footage, no matter how big or small your garden is.
Now, you're in Nova Scotia, Canada, and for people who are unfamiliar with where that's located, that's about 12-hour drive north of New York. Is that about right?
I think you are spot on. It is exactly 12 hours, and so north and to the east, we're actually Nova Scotia is almost an island, actually. It's just held on to North America by a small piece of land. So we're very much close to the water, and in fact, if I look out my bedroom window, I can kind of see the ocean far, far away.
Now, with that being said, you guys in Nova Scotia have implemented what I would term as a chemical ban. Now, many other cities need to maybe really look at this. Explain what that is and explain what restrictions prohibit you from using on your own property, on your own land.
Well, it's kind of like, it's so second nature to me now, I kind of forget about it, honestly. I mean, for 20 years now, we don't even throw out our dinner table scraps. Nothing gets thrown in the garbage like that. All organic materials are composted by the city, or if, like me, by myself. Everything is recycled. You can't throw, obviously, I haven't thrown glass in the garbage since I was probably like a teenager or younger. Same with plastics. Everything gets recycled. And, the pesticide bylaw came into effect almost 16 years ago. It was August of 2000. And, Halifax, where I live here, they passed a bylaw that basically regulated pesticides. So you're not allowed to, you can't even buy weed and feed. You can't just spray chemicals in your garden, whether it's for, fungicide, insecticide. If you got dandelions in your lawn, you can't just go buy the over-the-counter herbicides for that as well. It's just, we've all had to become organic gardeners. And I think there was a lot of initial fear. People are going to be like, oh my gosh, the pest populations are going to swell. We're going to be invaded. It's going to be terrible. But that never happened. Yes, sometimes there are dandelions in the lawn. Even in our parks, there's dandelions in the lawn sometimes. But we all just kind of said, who cares? What's the big deal about a few dandelions? And it's funny, a lot of the tool companies, like Fiskars, they make dandelion weeders. You step on and it pulls up the whole plant. And every time I talk to those guys, they make a joke that those things sell so well in Canada because of all of our pesticide bylaws that Canadians are the biggest buyers of their dandelion weeders.
Well, it's something that, in the United States, chemicals really came about after World War II. Prior to that, we all lived, our grandparents and great-grandparents lived just like you're living now, and they did just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think too, like the intensive gardening by, again, planting things a little closer together. You know, I use a lot of mulches in my vegetable garden, so when I plant things like tomatoes or peppers, I mulch the soil with shredded leaves or straw. It helps suppress weeds. So even though I have a fairly large vegetable garden, it's not a lot of work. You know, because I use things again like mulch, and you know, I don't let weeds go to flower if there are weeds that pop up, so that I don't get more seeds. And in my lawn, you know, if dandelions come up, we do have a few. And one of the things I did do is our lawn is actually about a third clover, a low-growing white Dutch clover, which looks great, stays green even if it gets really dry in the summertime. If we have a drought, you know, again, there's no browning of the grass. The deer like it, and they stay out of my vegetable garden with the clover in the lawn. And it supports and attracts the bees and beneficial insects. So to me, the fact that my garden is just humming with so many bees, you know, parasitic wasps, all these wonderful, wonderful beneficial insects, it shows to me that Mother Nature is doing her job, so I don't have to get out the sprays and spray things.
Right. Now we all don't have fields of full sun. We may have partial shade. How much is partial shade? And what are some of the rules for growing in partial shade?
Well, you know, I do like talking with this because a lot of people think, you know what, I have only like 3 or 4 or 5 hours of sunlight. I can't grow any vegetables. I've just got to stick to the things like hosta and other shade-loving, you know, ornamentals. That's not true. It's amazing, actually. One of the top viewed articles I wrote for my website, Savvy Gardening, is all about my vegetables for shade. And, you know, ideally, if you're growing things like tomatoes, you know, things that produce a fruit, those types of crops, they need lots of sun, 8 to 10 hours. But if you only have, say, partial shade, which is maybe, you know, 3 to 4 hours of sun a day, or even dappled shade, which can go up to 5 or 6, you can still grow a lot of things. But there's a couple rules. The rule for gardening and growing food in partial shade is think green. You know, most salad crops, things that are leafy, they're going to do very well for you with only limited light. And again, avoid the fruits, so tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, I'm sorry, they're off the table. If you have maybe 5 or 6 hours of sun, I would try maybe a cherry tomato. They'll probably do okay for you. Not full production, but good enough, you know, to make it worthwhile. And also pay extra attention to your soil. You know, if your plants are going to be starved for light and starved for nutrients, they're really not going to do well. So make sure you work in, you know, extra compost, aged manure, organic fertilizers into your soil before you plant, and that will make sure your plants aren't struggling for nutrients. So those are the kind of rules for me. But again, if you want to garden in partial shade, think green, you know, a lot of leafy greens, lettuce, Asian greens, you know, even things like, bush beans will do okay in partial shade. And again, a lot of, like, even herbs like parsley will do okay, mint, lemon balm. Just avoid the things that need to produce fruit.
Now, we have guests that come on the program from all over North America, and I like asking this question because everybody has a different answer, and we like to learn from everybody. What is one way, or what are some ways that you, and you just spoke about this a few minutes ago, about keeping deer out of the garden? Most people are not, they don't want to shoot the deer, even though to some people that may be a wonderful option. And based on where you live, you may not have the ability or the legal right to do such. What are some ways that you can maybe keep them out of the garden or greatly reduce their activity in your vegetable garden?
You know what? They have been the bane of my existence since I was about 11 and took over the vegetable garden. And right now, I live on a deer superhighway. Every day, there's about a dozen that wander very casually through my garden and through my landscape. Drives me crazy. But, you know, what I have basically this past year, last summer, I finally conquered the problem. And I'm not even going to knock on wood because I'm so secure in my solution to the deer problem. I spent $400 and I went electric. I always had deer netting around my fence, and sometimes they would go right through it. They would, you know, go underneath it, or they would jump over top of it. And, you know, it just was never a good solution. So I had the fence posts in place for the deer netting, and I put in a 3-strand electric fence. And it has been perfect. Not once this past summer, maybe I should knock on wood, did the deer get in my garden. So I've been very lucky. And so my 2,000 square feet are now surrounded by electric fence.
I'll be. So
it works great.
Great.
So let's talk about your 2 books here. You've got 2 books, The Year-Round Vegetable Gardener and the Holly's got
Groundbreaking Food Garden.
There you go. The Year-Round Vegetable Gardener book you sent to us a couple of years ago. Fantastic book. Yeah. Incredible photographs. Even if you don't like to read, you can just look at the pictures for hours. Now, people will look at this book and go, okay, you're in Nova Scotia, you're in Canada, it's cold. How do you manage to grow stuff when it's 2 degrees or 3 degrees or negative 18 Celsius or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, the cover photo for that book was taken in my garden in late January a couple of years ago. It was freezing, and, the photographer had come up from Birmingham, Alabama, and my editor was there, and he's going to be like, we had like 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow. He's like, there's not going to be anything to photograph here. He was adamant there wouldn't be. So I brushed off the cold frame, I propped open the cover, and it was just pure green. Like 5 or 6 different shades of green. There was lettuces and spinach and arugula, kale, endive. It was gorgeous. And the thing is, I'm not really growing in winter. I'm just harvesting. So a lot of these vegetables are just staying in their unheated devices like cold frames or mini hoop tunnels. And I'm also picking the right vegetables. There's no, right now in my garden in the wintertime, there's no tomatoes. There's no zucchini. It's all the cold tolerant and cool tolerant vegetables. Lots of root crops, parsnips, celeriac, carrots, things like this, different types of turnips, and a lot of leafy greens that are cold tolerant, Asian greens, kale, all those types of things. So any given winter, we have about 30 different crops we harvest all winter long. And it's really remarkably easy. I'd like to say there's a lot of work in the garden in the winter, but in the wintertime when things are under my covers, like, the cold frames, a layer of mulch even, or the mini hoop tunnels, the deer can't get the crops, which is heavenly. There's no bugs. No aphids, no slugs, which, again, drive me crazy. There's no diseases, there's no watering, there's no weeding, there's no work. The only thing I do, basically, from late November until early March is harvest. So, it's a no-brainer for me. I can grow my own organic food 365 days of the year.
Now, just for our listeners who have not read your book and to kind of give them an idea, when you start your winter garden, you essentially start it before winter, and then, like you said, you're harvesting. Is that correct? Or kind of what's your
Totally true, yeah. Like my carrots for the winter garden are planted the first week in August. But a lot of crops are planted into September and October, the quick-growing greens. And then, once we get longer days again, once we pass that hump in winter, when the days start to stretch out a little bit longer, starting in late February and early March, I usually start putting in seeds. If I have empty spaces in my cold frames, I'll start planting fresh crops. And again, because they're cold-tolerant vegetables, they don't care that it's still freezing in my garden and there's snow around everywhere. All they care about is the light. So they take a little longer to germinate, maybe, 2 weeks instead of, 1 week. But pretty soon I have, again, a fresh crop of spinach and kale and lettuces and endives and all these wonderful greens. Months before most gardeners even break ground on their spring garden. So most of it's, again, planted late summer, early fall, but then I do start planting in late winter again as well.
Now, I want to talk about your second book you've wrote, Groundbreaking Food Garden, 73 Plants That Will Change the Way You Grow Your Garden. You actually had help on this. You got together some gardeners from North America and kind of collaborated this book, didn't you?
I stalked 72 of my favorite gardeners. Yes, I was relentless. So all of my favorite gardeners, people like Joe Lample from Growing a Greener World. Jessica Walliser, the author of Attracting Beneficial Bugs to Your Garden, which is one of my favorite books. I stalked these people, and I said, I want to know what you like to grow, what varieties, what are your favorite crops to grow, and how do you do it? Because I'm curious. I always want to know what vegetable gardeners are growing and how they do it. So I just thought other people might be interested. And so we came up with these incredible, there's 73 plans in the garden. I contributed one, so 72 contributors plus me. And I interviewed them, and I wrote about their gardens, and we had these beautiful illustrations drawn up. And so if you're new to vegetable gardening, you're thinking about expanding, you need more inspiration, this is the book that will really help, I think, build a very productive vegetable garden for you. It was really a lot of fun to do.
Now, with 72 other gardeners, was there anything that you had like a aha moment or, oh my goodness, I can't believe that, I've just learned something? Was there a lot of that going on?
So much of that going on. My gosh. And that's the problem. That's why I decided to expand my garden. Last year I was too busy writing my next books, but now that book, is now in production and will be coming out in about a year or so, I am expanding my garden, changing the design, making myself lots of work, but I'm so looking forward to the end result. And it's all because of all these contributors to Groundbreaking Food Garden. They were just so incredibly inspiring, and I got so many awesome ideas for my gardens that I had to change things around a little bit.
Fantastic. Now, where can we find your books?
Well, they're available in pretty much all bookstores as well as online at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and in Canada, Chapters online. All the big bookstores should carry it. And, my first book, The Year-End Vegetable Gardener, won the American Horticultural Society Book Award. And, so it kind of really helped, promote it to people. So a lot of bookstores started carrying it, which is wonderful.
Well, Niki, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us on the program. And do you have a website, a blog, where we can go and learn more about the tips that you continue to offer to us?
Absolutely. I have a website I own with 3 other of my favorite garden writers, so it's savvygardening.com, savvygardening.com, and you can find me there, ask questions, or just check out our posts.
Wonderful. We'll have that link in the show notes as well. Niki, thank you very much for being on the program today.
Thank you both. Thank you very much to both of you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this.
At dollarseed.com, all of our seeds are only $1 a pack. And we have online resources that teach you all about the rewarding hobby of growing your own plants, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Imagine the joy you'll feel when your children actually help you harvest your first garden crop, or the pride of knowing you'll never need a florist again. Visit dollarseed.com and grow a little magic of your own for just $1. Dollarseed.com. What could be healthier?
Water is our most important resource. The key is to capture the rain that falls on your property. No need for bulky rain barrels that are hard to handle and just don't fit in. Rain Reserve has solved the problem for you with their multi-size and color cube-like units. A rain barrel that does not look like one. Capturing rain easy, going unnoticed by passerbyers and blending into the surrounding. Construction so easy, even children can put it together. To get your Rain Reserve, visit rainreserve.com and use coupon code RAIN2016 to save 10% on total purchase.
What you feed your plants and soil matters. Tomatoes should be big and juicy, but not at the soil's expense. Age-olds grow, bloom, kelp, and fish and seaweed, reliable fertilizers, gardens by supplying the plants and the soil with fast-acting nutrients and natural ingredients to create delicious plants and healthy soil. If you desire juicy tomatoes and healthy soil to grow them in, visit ageold.com for more information on Age Old and our suppliers.
Hello, everybody. I'm Farmer Lovejoy, host of The Dirty Cultivator, a podcast show where farmers can be heard promoting the consumption and importance of more locally grown food.
And I'm Carrie Kay. Don't forget to listen to our Northwest perspective at The Dirty Cultivator.
And now, let's get to the garden with Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the program. If you want to check out our sponsors, you can view them on our sponsor tab on our website at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.
Underneath the podcast
Underneath
tab.
the podcast tab. Thank you. And you can support them as they support us.
Well, we've got one more thing to accomplish before we get out of here today. We want to Gardening in 2 Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Gardening in 2 Minutes is an audio production that Holly and I produce on a weekly basis for a couple radio programs and a handful of podcasts. If you would like Gardening in 2 Minutes on your particular program, contact us through our website. And this Gardening in 2 Minutes is all about
farmers markets. The Farmers Markets 101.
And here is Gardening in 2 Minutes. This is Gardening in 2 Minutes. Sometimes in gardening we have fails, other times we have successes, and sometimes we just strictly don't have the space to grow what we want. Well, we have the option of farmers markets to go to.
One thing we've noticed is farmers markets, you can get a lot of produce for pretty cheap, and if there's something that maybe you can't successfully grow and you don't want to use the space for, then you can get at the farmers market. We learned this year we had a poor cabbage crop, so when we went to the farmers market, I picked up a 10-pound cabbage for $3.
Now, farmers markets just doesn't have only vegetables.
Right, you can also get things like soap, honey, locally made items, oats, different flours, different grains.
Meats.
And they have meats too, eggs, and sometimes even some fun shopping stuff like little kitschy stuff or gifts.
Now, there's some techniques when you go to a farmer's market, whether you've been to 100 or you're going to your first one next week.
What I do is I usually shop around first. If I'm looking for, say I'm looking for 4 different vegetable items, I walk around and I see where I can find the best price. I also bring my own bags. They're not going to give me a discount or anything. I just like bringing my own bags to prevent them from having to supply bags for me.
And if you're concerned about how the produce is grown, the farmers are more than happy to explain to you the techniques and the processes and maybe some of the chemicals they spray or don't spray on their crops.
Right. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. They're more than happy to give you information. You can also learn about other vegetables there, too. You may see a vegetable you've never seen before. Ask. They can tell you, and sometimes they can tell you how to cook it.
And you can also save seeds from those organically heirloom-grown vegetables as well, so you can grow them in your vegetable garden next year. For more information on farmers markets, our weekly video production, as well as our free downloadable digital quarterly magazines, you can find all that information at
thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
A gardener for all gardeners. For Gardening in 2 Minutes, I'm Joey Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
So if you've never gone to a farmer's market, or you visit one regularly, both that Gardening in 2 Minutes will help both of you in that scenario. And again, just because you garden, that doesn't mean you shouldn't or don't need to go to a farmer's market.
It's just fun anyway.
You can get a lot of produce. And here's the other thing. If you have difficulty in growing a particular plant that's it's more designed for your area, whether you're in zone 9 or 3, they will help you, kind of give you some advice on the best ways to grow that plant. And then, like in the Gardening in 2 Minutes, they will tell you how their plants were grown, organically or inorganically, and you can decide on whether or not you should purchase those for consumption. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate you tuning into the program. We appreciate you downloading it, sharing with your friends, and if you have any questions, feel free to send it to us through our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. We've got over 700 how-to garden. Well, I think we're at like 725 how-to garden-related videos there. The audio you've heard on the program is courtesy of sfx.co.uk and audioneutronic.com, two royalty-free and copyright-free websites that we use to help liven up the podcast.
And the audio from Nasala Kombucha and Dollar Seed comes from themselves.
So until next time, I'm Joey Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
And we will see you in the garden. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is a production of the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide and distributed in association with WI Garden Media.